Hello everyone. Today I'd like to show you how I make my unlined tops or camisoles, but instead of using binding, which is a pretty difficult technique to master, I'm going to be using bend roll and finish the neckline with the baby hem. And this is what it's gonna look like from the inside or outside. You will have the stitching line. It's not a clean finished neckline, but it also requires very little fabric. It could be like a much easier and faster project to finish. So let's go over what we need to make this happen. I'm gonna be showing you a Wooster bias top with a scoop neckline. And I already cut the pattern, so it's just the front and the back. I have my bias strips for the straps, and I have my fusible tape. So my next step is going to be going to the iron and fuse the neckline in the back and the front. And just to remind you that you could use your paper tissue as a pattern when you are setting it up on the iron. Of course, make sure you are fusing it from the wrong side of the fabric. But before you apply the fusible, you want to lay out the neckline and make sure that it doesn't stretch out the way it's supposed to sit. Like you're using the pattern as your guideline, and once you make sure that it lays well, this is when you're gonna go and start fusing it all around. And try to keep that line pretty uniform with your tape, because what we're gonna try to do is we're gonna try to hide this when we are using the baby hem technique on the top. So you don't see it. Just like in this top, the neckline was fused, but it's hidden under this hem when it's folded. One thing I wanted to remind you guys that before you apply your fusible tape, you really do want to make sure that your cut pattern is exactly to the measurement of the pattern, the fabric, so it doesn't stretch out. And I'm using one of the part of the tissue paper, and literally I am easing this in or putting it where it's supposed to be. I am checking where my notches are. It looks correct. It's at the edges where it's supposed to be, and now I can start applying my fusible tape, and I'm gonna be going, trying to keep it uniform and keeping it about a quarter away from the edge. But our tape is about a quarter, so I'm just gonna be following the tape measurement, the width of the tape. And I'm just gonna go all around in the back and the front, and after that we're gonna be ready to put the stuff together. Here are my necklines. They are fused already, front and back, and now I'm going to start attaching side seam with French seams. So I'm gonna pin the sides together with the right side facing out. I am using my notches as a guideline as well. Then I'm gonna go to the machine. I'm gonna put a 1/4 inch stitch up here. That's the first part of the French seam. I will trim it to about 1/8 seam allowances, turn it out, and close it with another 1/4 inch stitch. I will not be covering this because I made a video about this, but I will be making 2 flat spaghetti straps from these bias strips as well. And once I'm gonna finish this, we will jump on the machine and I will show you the neckline that I really wanted to show you in this video. My top side seams are finished now. So I use the French seams to close this up. Another thing I forgot to mention is it's a good idea to mark the notches where our straps will be set, because once we close it, we're gonna lose the notches. And now, oh, and I also have my straps ready as well, though this could be the next step after you finish the neckline. It doesn't really matter. But what we're gonna do now is using the baby hem tape or band roll tape, we're gonna finish this neckline in 2 steps. So I'm gonna do maybe this part first and we'll baby hem it, and then we're gonna close the other part, the second one. And that's pretty much it. And the only thing we're gonna have left to be finished is our hem on the bottom. So this part is no different from regular baby hem process. We're gonna start on the face side. We're gonna attach the first layer of the tape. So make sure that you don't stretch the neckline. Even though it's fused, just don't use any extra force. So we're gonna finish this stitch. We're going to trim any extra, if there are any extra things to trim. Sometimes I will have the fusible tape peeking out a little more when it's cut a little bit wider. This tape was cut exactly at 1/4, so there isn't much to trim. So our first stitch is done. So if you see anything that needs to be trimmed, now is the time. Just make sure that you don't cut the tape. It's your guide. And we can do 2 things. We can go straight on the machine and fold this over. That would be from the other side. Sorry. Fold it over and stitch, or we can go to the iron right now and lightly press the fabric up so it lays nice and flat, and it's just going to be a little bit easier to work on the machine. You can actually even do first iron work this way and then press it out and iron it one more time. So it's really up to you. I'm gonna go to the iron right now and I slightly press it one way, and I'm gonna meet you back on the machine for the second stitch. I'm back from the iron, and hopefully you can see that the fabric lays a little bit flatter. And now all it is that I'm doing the second stitch in order to close the seam allowances in. And I am stitching as close to this edge as possible, but of course not going out of this area, because then we won't be able to pull the tape out. And work small sections at a time. Don't rush. Usually you don't want to rush with bias projects, period. And what I'm looking for here when I'm pulling the fabric out a little bit, I want this to look pretty uniform all the way through. And those teeth on the tape is kind of like a guide or keeping this width uniform. And I'll show you when we're gonna remove the tape, you won't even see the fusible tape that was holding our neckline, stabilizing the neckline. Okay. And now let's remove the tape. And this is what you see from the inside. You see how that fusible tape completely disappeared because it's hidden under the stitch. And all we're doing now is we're doing exactly the same thing for this part, for the back part of the top. And that's pretty much it for the neckline. So this part, I'm gonna do it by hand. I'm gonna pull it into the inner side of the garment. I'm gonna knot this, and we have to attach our straps after, and could be done two ways. You could either leave it raw because it's unbiased, it's not gonna really fray so much, and you know, you're gonna catch it by hand all around. So this is what it's gonna look like from the face side. Or you can do this, you can hide the raw edge by setting it in first and then folding and covering the raw edge. It just requires a little bit more, you know, carefully attaching it so you don't see the raw part inside. And on the back, a lot of times what you see is the strap, after you of course measure the length that you need. A lot of times it's also like they leave a longer strap. You don't need to, you can do exactly the same thing as in the front, so this thing doesn't hang out. Or, you know, if you're so really sure about the length that you're never gonna, you know, change it, then just maybe do a tiny one that you had in the front, either covering it or maybe leave it hanging, a little tail, a little bit hanging. It's up to you, but it's more about what it looks like from outside. And the only thing, in order for me to finish the top, of course, I have to still do the baby hem on the bottom, but you know how to do this already. And that's pretty much it. I will have a final picture of the garment once it's finished, but the whole idea of this video was to show you that you can do these things. You can do like really fast camisoles or sleepwear using this method.